Why does Novo Nordisk want Metsera so badly? Are we going to get Wegovy vials or maybe even a different presentation of Wegovy? When will we get Cagrisema? When will we get high dose semaglutide? We've got answers to literally all of these questions today because we're going to break down today's 2025 quarter three Novo Nordisk earnings call. And there was a ton in this. You're not going to want to miss it. Welcome to On the Pen.
Welcome to the On the Pen podcast with your host, Dave Knapp.
Welcome to this so busy earnings call season. There's just been so much. The news has been changing very rapidly. Of course, yesterday we got breaking news that the Trump administration has reached agreements with both Lilly and Novo Nordisk for discounts, both direct-to-consumer discounts, cash pay discounts for GLP-1s for obesity and type 2 diabetes, and obviously all of that being done within the framework of adding obesity coverage to Medicare. Sounds like we're going to get a huge announcement tomorrow morning. So there will be even more to cover tomorrow morning. But we got tons of breaking news today from the Novo Nordisk earnings call, which happened very early this morning. We got information that gives us, I think, a little bit more color around why Novo Nordisk is so interested in acquiring Metsera. We got interesting information on Cagrilintide and Semaglutide in terms of the timelines for high-dose Semaglutide and when Cagrisema might hit the market. We got information on their triple agonist. There's just so much to get into, and I can't wait to do it with all of you. So as you're jumping in here, welcome. Welcome to Sue, to Dewey, to Michael, to CJ. There is so much to get into, and gosh, I love getting into all this stuff with all of you. So welcome. As you're dropping in, hit the subscribe button wherever you're watching, follow along, or hit the subscribe button. It's your easiest form of advocacy that you can possibly do to promote the work that we do. If you're new here, my name is Dave Knapp. This is On the Pen. We are an obesity medicine news platform. We bring patient-centric obesity medicine news to patients to empower them to have more competent and confident conversations with their doctor. Why? Because we get all the news about these medications from one of two places. One place would be like Obesity Week that's happening this week, which is very clinical. All the data that gets released down there by these pharmaceutical companies are clinical trial data designed for clinicians. Or we get them from earnings call season, right? We did the Eli Lilly earnings call the other day. Today, we're doing the Novo Nordisk earnings call, and we extrapolate the information that we find in these earnings calls. We've been doing this for about 3 years, and we just help to empower you to have better conversations with your doctor. So welcome. It's good to have you here. If you're new here, drop an N in the chat next to your name. Let me know that you're new here. I would love to welcome you by name. My name is Dave, and we're going to get started on this earnings call. So the first thing that I want to cover with you today is probably the most important thing, I think, for patients right now. I mean, so many people have been on either semaglutide or tirzepatide, and the number one thing that we hear from patients all the time is, Dave, when are we going to get higher doses of these medications? I'm maxed out on tirzepatide. I'm maxed out on semaglutide, branded or otherwise, and I'm just curious when I can anticipate that we're going to have higher dose options for me. And so I want to share this screen grab with you today from the earnings call, because this gives us a lot of information. So you can see this is their research and development milestones for Novo Nordisk. And you look at quarter three, 2025, that is what just wrapped up. So what happened in quarter three of 2025? Well, we got the essentially oral semaglutide 25 milligram EU submission. We got the EU submission for semaglutide 7.2 milligrams. That all happened in the EU. We got US approval and a EU positive opinion on the SOUL cardiovascular outcomes trial for oral semaglutide. So we've got those potential indications to get oral versions of semaglutide vis-a-vis Rybelsus. So a lot of stuff happening. And then the phase 1 clinical trial for Novo Nordisk triple agonist. So they have their own version of retatrutide, essentially, right? Triple agonist, glucagon, GIP, and GLP-1. They've got their own version of that. And they got in Q3 of 2025, phase 1 results for that medication. Now, when we look at Q4 of 2025, that's what's happening right now. And we see that we're going to get phase 3 results in Cagrisema for diabetes. We're going to get phase 2 results for the oral and the subcutaneous amycretin. Now, that is a combination amylin and incretin drug, a little bit different. It's like Cagrisema 2.0, right? And so we've got that phase 2 results coming this quarter. We've got a U.S. decision coming in the fourth quarter expected on oral semaglutide 25 milligrams. That will be oral Rybelsus, oral Wegovy. So you'll have a weight loss version of a GLP-1 pill from Novo Nordisk and from Eli Lilly, probably around the same time. You'll get oral Wegovy and orforglipron from Eli Lilly around the same time. We expect those decisions likely here in 2025 for oral Wegovy. And depending on whether or not Eli Lilly gets the fast track on orforglipron, we know that they've submitted that. And we do believe that that was part of these negotiations taking place between the Trump administration and Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly in terms of how to fast track some of these drugs as part of that negotiation to bring down the cost of incretins. In Q4 of 2025, we also got the start of a phase 1B and phase 2B initiation trials for the triple agonist in obesity and type 2 diabetes. We got a phase 3 initiation of a cagrilintide study. So we talk about Cagrisema, but cagrilintide is likely to hit the market as a standalone therapy, possibly something that you could talk to your doctor about combining with another treatment that you're on. But in cagrilintide essentially being an amylin agonist as a standalone treatment, we got a phase 3 initiation of a trial going on there. So that's really positive news as well. Now, in the first half of 2026, this is where it gets exciting, because in the first half of 2026, we're going to get that readout of the phase 3 trials for Cagrisema in type 2 diabetes. So you could look at a potential second half indication for type 2 diabetes for Cagrisema, and that hitting the market maybe late 2026. We're going to get a U.S. decision on insulin icodec. That is for type 2 diabetes as well. I believe that's a once weekly. And that has kind of faltered a little bit for Novo Nordisk in the past. And so hopefully they'll have that U.S. decision on that in the first half of 2026. We're going to get phase 3B results in Cagrisema for obesity, and we're going to get the U.S. submission for approval for Cagrisema in the first half of 2026. Now, we've been waiting to hear when that's going to happen, and it sounds like that's going to coincide with the phase 3B results of the Cagrisema clinical trial. So the first half of 2026, again, maybe we see cagrilintide for obesity. That second half of 2026 will be interesting to see. And then, of course, we've got a phase 3 trial initiation for both oral and subcutaneous amycretin for obesity. So a lot of really exciting things happening for Novo Nordisk. I got to say, I'm not into giving any sort of advice here, medical, financial, or otherwise. But in my humble opinion, as somebody who follows this space very closely, I have to think that Novo Nordisk, based upon everything that's going on, has to be one of the most undervalued stocks on the stock market. They took such a beating over Cagrisema and the outcomes there, but they are making a huge play right now to acquire Metsera, and it sounds ever increasingly like that is going to happen. And we'll have to see over the course of the next days and weeks how this all plays out. But we've got some more interesting information on why I believe we're seeing such a strong play by Novo Nordisk for Metsera. And I don't really see anybody else talking about this. So we're gonna broach that topic here in a moment. So this is really exciting news for both patients in diabetes and obesity as we look at the potential launch of semaglutide, high dose semaglutide, let's say by the end of the first half or early second half of 2027. It's highly plausible that we'll have a high dose 7.2 milligrams of Wegovy is an option for patients who have sort of maxed out on the 2.4. That's 3 times the highest dose currently. Now, the weight loss that you see going up 3 times is marginal. I believe it was somewhere around 17% versus maybe the 15% on the 2.4. But for those needing a bridge option until Cagrisema comes out, high dose semaglutide may be a really good option to sort of keep the weight loss going, which is very exciting to think about. And then, of course, by the end of next year, we get the final or the first readout on retatrutide, and then 2027 we get retatrutide from Eli Lilly. So the future is bright, and it's coming at us fast and furious. It's pretty wild to me how fast this whole space has moved. Listen, we started doing this 3 years ago, and when we talked about retatrutide, it was and we talked about Cagrisema, they were pipe dreams. And so just amazing to think about how close we are getting to these, and how close we are getting to the next generation of obesity medicine. Let me know in the comments of this video if you're excited for the next generation, because the current generation just isn't quite cutting it for you. I know that that's probably the minority of people, because these current treatments work pretty darn well. But for those with more advanced disease, we're very excited about the progression of these obesity medications. So I'm going to take this down for the time being. Check in with the chat. Say hey to Spoonie. Hey to Dewey, Cherry, Sue the Dude, Lori. Good to see you. Michelle, GLP-1 Journey and Reviews in the house. Dewey with a $20 super chat. Thank you very much for that, Dewey. This is very generous of you. Really appreciate that. Super sticker, I believe. Really generous of you. Thank you for supporting the work that we do here. Of course, if you want to support the work that we do here, like Dewey, the gifts are always appreciated but never expected. But you can also check out our sponsors at otplinks.com and find the special savings that we have for OTP listeners there. I'll leave it up at the bottom for you. So let's talk a little bit about Metsera, because there's been this back and forth between what's basically going on to acquire this company. And we've talked about it in terms of their long-acting amylin. We've talked about it in terms of their long-acting GLP-1, basically a once monthly injection versus a once weekly of these peptides. And really, when you think about combining the efficacy of the two, I think that it's really appealing and attractive to these drug companies. Now, I'm curious to hear from patients, because I think the general concept is that patients do not mind the once weekly dosing. And in fact, if you stretch the doses out too far to like a month, or let's say even there's been talk about 3 months, 6 months, even a one and done. Listen, if you're stuck with the side effects, you're stuck with them for longer, right? And so I think that it's an interesting topic of conversation, and maybe one of those areas where there seems to be maybe a disconnect between patients who use these medications on a daily basis and those who make decisions in these pharmaceutical companies. But obviously that's an attractive thing, right? When you talk about acquiring these two candidates, the once monthly, I do think it's also a bit of a concession on Novo Nordisk's part that Cagrisema has just not panned out the way that they maybe anticipated Cagrisema to pan out. Maybe not quite as potent as they thought. Although anecdotally, from a lot of folks that are out there on the research versions of cagrilintide, it is interesting to hear that it is a very, very powerful tool when it comes to appetite suppression. So, but this seems to be a bit of a concession there. But let's talk a little bit about something we haven't talked about a lot. When we've covered in the past, we've covered Metsera. We've talked about briefly the fact that they have an oral peptide delivery platform. Now let's talk about this a little bit, because we know that with oral semaglutide, Novo Nordisk purchased for $2 billion a technology called the SNAC technology, SNAC. And it's actually what allows the peptides to have oral bioavailability. In other words, your body is able to make use of the peptide, right? The subcutaneous injection is there because it's bioavailable. Peptides are destroyed by stomach acid and digestive enzymes. And so you have to find a way to protect the peptide as it makes its way through the stomach and into the intestines to be absorbed. Now, the SNAC technology that is incorporated into oral semaglutide Rybelsus is an older technology. And so this new platform that Metsera has developed called Momentum may be somewhat of a target here. Not maybe somewhat, but likely a huge part of the targeting of Metsera, and something that differentiates Metsera as a candidate for acquisition over maybe some of the other ones like Viking Therapeutics, who just really ramps up the dosage of VK2735 to make it effective, right? They don't have, at least they haven't touted publicly, a special oral peptide delivery mechanism that seems to differentiate itself much from some of the other technologies that do exist. And there are technologies out there that exist, that are, in the compounding world to help protect peptides and make them orally bioavailable. But these are like above and beyond programs developed by these companies like Metsera. And so when you look at some of the preclinical data on some of the candidates, like Metsera actually has a oral candidate called I think it's GGO, which is a GLP GIP oral from Metsera. And you look at some of the early candidates, some of the early preclinical models that they've run with rodents, you can see that the plasma concentration in the blood of the medication actually appears to be better than with Rybelsus in rodents. And so it could be a potential thing to explore down the line, to see if this Metsera program, and maybe Novo Nordisk has already got a peek under the hood at some data that we don't have access to see that the program that they're using for Metsera in the form of this Momentum program actually has more potential to extract more oral bioavailability out of peptides. And that makes a huge difference on a number of levels, right? Drug efficacy, right? If you're able to take the peptides that are in development by Novo Nordisk and combine them with the Momentum therapy, you extract potentially greater efficacy out of the drug. The other thing to consider is when you talk about high dose Rybelsus, because the SNAC technology may be waning a bit in its ability to make the peptides orally bioavailable, they have to use more active pharmaceutical ingredient. And so you've seen some interesting moves by Novo Nordisk, including sort of slow walking, bringing the high doses of Wegovy to market, slow walking, bringing the high doses of the oral versions of Rybelsus and now soon to be approved oral Wegovy to the market. Why? Because it all requires more active pharmaceutical ingredients. And as we know, Novo Nordisk has a proprietary technology that they used to extract the proteins from a yeasty brew, essentially, and extract the API. So it's a very labor-intensive process, the way that the peptides are made with, at least semaglutide is made within Novo Nordisk. And so when you talk about their ability to expand manufacturing to meet the demand, you're talking about a lot of API infrastructure. And so if they're able to improve the oral bioavailability of these drugs, then they don't need quite as much infrastructure to meet demand on the API side. Does that make sense? We're getting a little bit nerdy here for what we normally talk about, but that's a huge deal. And so I think that $10 billion is on the table for Metsera. I think a lot of that has to do with the effectiveness or potential effectiveness of their oral platform called Momentum and its ability to sort of help Novo Nordisk down the line to scale some of these treatments, especially on the oral side. So we'll be excited to see how that one shakes out. But at the end of the day, I would like to see other players get in this game, and it'll be interesting to see if the FTC even lets this thing go through. But these are the main things that they talked about on this earnings call in terms of what matters to patients living with obesity and diabetes. I do want to make mention, though, of the fact that there was a question at the end about different presentations of Wegovy. And it sounds like, it sounds like they confirmed, Novo Nordisk confirmed that they're in talks currently with the FDA on the Flex Touch pens for Wegovy. Now, if you're not familiar with these, we hypothesized about 2 years ago. I think I did a video on this. It's one of my short videos that we did, that Novo Nordisk could be using this to help with supply. So it's basically one pen, but then within the Flex Touch, you get little vials that sort of insert into the pen that you refill every month. And so it should be pretty interesting. And actually, I think I'm getting this wrong. I think the Flex Touch pen is actually the Ozempic pen. But they did talk about the potential to present Wegovy with the Flex Touch pen, which would be the multi-dose pen that they use for Ozempic. And so if they're able to do that, they cut down on, and this is the big part here, when they bring Wegovy to market in the Flex Touch pen, they're able to make 3 fewer pens per monthly fill, right? So you get 1 pen instead of 4 pens. It's much more efficient on the manufacturing side. It's much better for the environment. But we've also been surmising that there are other options within the framework of what Novo Nordisk offers, where they have a pen that has basically cartridges that are changed out with each dose or each month. That could be a potential for the future. And there was talk about the single dose vials as a potential option for their cash pay channel. So just like you've seen with Eli Lilly in bringing the single dose vials to the cash pay market to Lilly Direct, you may see Novo Nordisk do something similar as they try to scale out Wegovy and try to compete with this. What they used very early on in the earnings call was a phrase that I thought was interesting to think about, the way that they've been approaching this whole market as a increasingly consumer market. And so in the past, these drug companies have been sort of looking at their customers as the payers, right? The pharmacy benefit managers, and getting to doctors. But really, because of the rise of things like On the Pen and patient-centric obesity medicine news platforms like ours, patients are becoming aware of their options. They're becoming educated on what other medications are out there and what they might want to take to their doctor and have conversations about. And so identifying that, I think, is really unique, and they understand that patients want options. And so I think this is all definitely happening. They confirm these conversations are happening with the FDA. We'll be watching it closely to get a better idea of when we'll see these actually hit the market, but it is coming. And I think the Flex Touch pen for Wegovy would be a great start, but we'd also like to see them release the vials over on the Novo Nordisk side as well. Those are the main things that I saw in the earnings call today as I listened to it. Some of the interesting tidbits in there that they have market data that seems to indicate that there are over 1 million people on compounded GLP-1s right now. I think it's probably much higher than that personally, given some of the numbers that we've seen from previous years, and given that there are more and more options daily, it seems like, for patients to use compounded medications. It'll be interesting to see whether or not there are some concessions made on the administration side when it comes to compounding. They seem to indicate that these are not part of the talks with the administration, but the wording was very careful. And so we can't be 100% sure, but one of the things they did reiterate was that they believe that there is illicit versions of the active pharmaceutical ingredient that is coming into the country. And so if you do see enforcement from the administration as sort of a quid pro quo for bringing these drugs to the market a little bit cheaper via the cash pay channel, via Medicare, etc., you may see the increased enforcement on illicit APIs. We talked a little bit earlier about how Novo Nordisk makes their semaglutide. It is a unique process that they use that is likely not used in really very many, if any, of the compounded versions. They're more of a chemically synthesized version of semaglutide. So when they make the case with the administration, hey, we make this in a very specific way that compounders do not, perhaps you see the administration sort of go after some of those API sources. Maybe you see the green list used as a lever to actually throttle some of the imports of API into this country. Interestingly enough, they say that it's not safe, it's not proven, but it is a chemical synthesis that makes tirzepatide, right? So it's just a way of making a peptide that it's sort of subtly different, but that's sort of their argument that they make. But my argument back would be, if that makes semaglutide inherently unsafe, that it's chemically synthesized, wouldn't that make tirzepatide inherently unsafe because it is chemically synthesized in the branded side? So interesting sort of, again, deep dive nerd stuff that most of you probably won't care about, but I do find it interesting. So a lot of stuff going on with Novo Nordisk, and I appreciate y'all being here and hanging out. If you're just joining in here, please hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button. If you could interact with the content, that always makes a huge difference in how these videos perform. And the more people that see and hear this information, the better conversations they have and the better health outcomes. So it's a very easy, simple form of advocacy. Of course, we're seeing the fruit of our labor materialize in real time. We're seeing cheaper GLP-1s hit the market. We're seeing hopefully an announcement tomorrow morning, which we'll jump back on here and be live tomorrow morning at some point to sort of talk about and dissect the devil is in the details, as they say. So we'll find out just what we're going to see in terms of a reduction in cost of GLP-1s, in terms of timeline of adding obesity medicine to Medicare. But all of this is stuff we've fought for and worked together for. So if you want to advocate with us, the easiest thing you can do is subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, do all of those things. And I would ask that you would just take a moment to do that right now. Now, we've got around 500 people in the live between all of the platforms. So I want to thank you all for being here and hanging out with me today. I do want to open up for questions if you have them, and just say hi to some of our friends in the chat here. I want to say hi to Jayneb, who made it to a live. Listen, it's very hard for me to schedule these, but now that we're full-time in the podcast world, I plan on being live quite a bit more here over on YouTube, especially. So if you're watching somewhere else, make sure you go subscribe over on YouTube. That is definitely my favorite place to go live and interact with friends. Michael wants to know, will the super chat will super chat after update PayPal next time? I can't really make sense of that, but it sounds like the super chat won't work for you. So I apologize for that. But Dewey wants to know, who sells a good GLP online that is real. Branded medications are sold by our partners over at Shed. And you can check that all out in my link tree, which you can get to just by typing otplinks.com. otplinks.com will take you to all the links, and then there's savings on all of the things that we offer there that are special and unique to the OTP community. So just type in otplinks.com to find out all of our different sponsors that we have. And I want to take a moment and just thank the sponsors that we have, because we talk about doing this full time. I could not do it without the sponsors. They're the ones that pay the bills and allow us to do this. So I really appreciate all of them. And you can learn more about all of them: Shape'a, Claimable, Shed, Integrated Peptides, all over at otplinks.com. Kelly says, hi, I'm glad I'm able to hop on the live. I'm loving all this GLP-1 news. Yeah, it's a big week in GLP-1s for sure. Obesity week's going on right now. We're going to get more data. And actually, I think we got more data today on the oral Wegovy. So I'll be excited to bring that to you. Fractal Health is going to be sharing some of their GLP-GIP combo gene therapy, right? So when you talk about Mounjaro, Zepbound, tirzepatide from Eli Lilly, Fractal's actually got a program that is an endoscopic procedure that trains your body to make your own version of this in higher quantities. So we're going to get some more data on that. I think preclinical data, probably rodent or pig models, but it'll be interesting to get. Deb Zimmerman's in the chat. Good to see some of the OGs in here today. If you've got a question, drop it in the chat here. We've got a few minutes left to hang out with you. Covered today Novo Nordisk's earnings call. It's been a big week. We had Eli Lilly earnings call the other day. And then, of course, the big news yesterday on the podcast that we did live yesterday, where we got the news that the Trump administration, vis-a-vis the IRA, right? So this has been obviously yeoman's work on the Trump administration side to get all these people to the table on most favored nations. But the only reason that most favored nations could even go forward is because of the IRA negotiate, or the IRA legislation, I should say, the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed under the Biden administration that actually gave framework for the Trump administration to work through most favored nations, which is, this whole idea that the rest of the world, what they pay is what we should pay in the United States, right? The Trump administration enacted through executive order most favored nations at the end of their last administration, but then the courts ultimately ended up looking at that and saying there's no law within which to enforce this. And so the IRA gave framework for all that. So that's why we have that. So a rare case where you see actually, a Democratic administration and a Republican administration, and the two things they're doing are working. The two things that they did are working synergistically to actually make something happen for the American people. So a lot of flowers to give out in the process of all this, and we'll wait to give out all the flowers until tomorrow, when we know, again, when the devils are in the details. If you did see it last night, the beaver moon is bright in the night sky. Yes, I'm a sky nerd. I did notice that the moon last night was extra bright here in Iowa as well. So Jay Neb, a neighbor here, Sue the Dude wants to know any clarification on the Zepbound price, 150, 250. So what? So essentially we had sort of conflicting reports yesterday. Max Bayer, our friend, who's a health reporter over at Endpoints, got a scoop basically saying that these companies were at the table with the Trump administration were going to announce the starter doses at 150. Now, there was clarification later in the day. I believe it came from the Wall Street Journal that said that it's actually the starter doses of Wegovy that are going to be available at 150, and that the price for starting doses of Zepbound was going to be $299. Now, what does starting doses mean even? Is it 2.5? Is it 2.5 and 5? What does that mean for the upper doses? Is there any change there? I don't know the answer to that. We don't know the answer to that. We'll have that information tomorrow morning when the Trump administration makes this announcement with the executives from Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly. And so we'll have more there. I've texted Max. I was like, hey, we got to get clarification on this. So I hope that Max is in the press gaggle tomorrow and is able to get some more clarity for us on this. But it sounds like $299 for the starting dose of Zepbound, which is about $50 lower than it is right now. We'd like to see that translate across the different brands. I think here's my own personal opinion on it, Sue. What I think happened yesterday is we did see also from the report that came out from the Wall Street Journal is that orforglipron would be offered at $150 through their cash pay or through Trump RX, right? So think about it this way. That may be what Lilly was willing to give away here was $150 for orforglipron. They've got billions of it in stock, and it's kind of the gateway GLP-1, right? It's more approachable as an oral medication than the injectables are for people. And if they can get in on a GLP-1 for $150 a month, hey, Lilly's got this pill. I think that people will ultimately be let down by, depending on how much weight they have to lose, by orforglipron, and then look towards the injectable options. And so I wouldn't be surprised tomorrow if we learn that Lilly didn't make a lot more concessions on the upper doses of Zepbound, because that's their cash cow right now, and instead made their concessions on the price that they were willing to offer for orforglipron through a Trump RX. I don't know exactly how that's going to shake out, and that's all speculation on my part. But to me, I think that was the big concession from Lilly, was probably on orforglipron, because I think orforglipron is one where it makes a lot of sense to go after volume, right? But then we did hear from Dave Ricks at the All In Summit, the All In Podcast Summit, that he thought if orforglipron came to market at $100, it would stifle innovation, or those weren't his exact words, but that's what he was getting at. So we'll have to see. Calamity Jane says, do you think it will impact upcoming quarterly formularies? It could, if it all happens fast enough. It could definitely impact the formularies. So we'll have to see how that all shakes out over the next couple of days. It seems things are working faster on GLP-1s in terms of cost and new medications. Ruben, I agree with that wholeheartedly. It seems like when you see concessions on prices of new drugs, it never happens this quick. In fact, I was thinking of it last night. My wife is on a biologic for rheumatoid arthritis. It's called etanercept. The brand name is called Enbrel. And Enbrel has been $4,000, I believe, list price since she started it. And she started it when she was 10 years old, when it just came out. She's now older than 10 years old. And she's been on this drug for almost 25, 30-ish years. It's still $4,000 a month. So to think that we've gone from, when Zepbound launched, $1,100, then we got the cash pay price at, $499 for the upper doses, $349 for the starting dose. We've already seen the price come down in half if you're talking about cash pay for drugs. So regardless of what you think about the price point and how unachievable and unattainable that is for many people, it is pretty remarkable that we've seen Eli Lilly move that fast on price for a drug that has this much benefit to people, because literally every day we're getting another study that says that it's cardiac protective, it's good for sleep apnea. There's very few things that it doesn't seem to touch. So pretty amazing how fast we've seen the drugs come down on us. And I believe investors from their side, they think it's happening too quickly, but it can't happen fast enough from the patient side, right? And I realize there's a lot of angst because these do wonders for people metabolically. It's a metabolic revolution. Calamity Jane says, I'm new to your channel. Sorry for being late to the party. Well, better late than never. And we're always happy to have new folks joining on the pen. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button. You're type 1 on Zepbound, which is exciting for type 1 diabetics. So if you have any insight in the FDA, friends, on when they will get through to their type 1 trials, let me know. Yeah. So when you think about it, Calamity, one of the things that's been shown in some smaller studies for semaglutide, which could potentially extrapolate out to tirzepatide. We hear of a lot of people on type 1 diabetes that are on tirzepatide. What we've heard in some of these early smaller studies, not sanctioned by the drug companies, but, more like doctors, doing some studies within their practices, it appears that these GLP-1 medications could help to preserve beta cell function. Now, beta cell are the cells within your pancreas that are responsible for helping you release insulin. And so if they're able to show that clinically, that would be a game changer. But I don't know about indications for that, right? Because we even know with type 2 diabetes, there is good clinical data that shows that 94% of patients who are pre-diabetic who start tirzepatide and stay on tirzepatide don't develop type 2 diabetes. They go off the medication, they start developing type 2 diabetes, right? So we know it's a prophylaxis against type 2 diabetes, but we don't have an FDA indication for it, right? And so will we see an FDA indication in type 1 for GLP-1s? I got to think that at some point we will, but hopefully in the meantime, the prices come down so much on these older generation, because pretty soon we're talking about Ozempic as an older generation GLP-1. When we talk about Metsera and these long-acting amylin agonists and long-acting GLP-1s, we talk about, the potential for Maritide, which is a once-a-month GLP-1. We talk about Viking Therapeutics VK2735 or retatrutide, whatever we're talking about. This stuff's all right around the corner. We've got Survodutide from Boehringer Ingelheim coming soon as well. We should get phase 3 data on that any day now. I guess my point is time flies. And so hopefully with the cost coming down on these, it'll be less of an issue for our type 1 friends whose doctors might find it appropriate because maybe there's a cash pay option that's reasonable if you're a type 1 diabetic who benefits from GLP-1. Calamity says she's amazing on it. Cut my insulin in half. Amazing. I'm type 1 for over 30 years. You have to hit the beta cells early to preserve insulin production. Yeah, you do. It's definitely early on in the diagnosis that you have to have it if there's going to be any preservation. But they have seen it in diabetics. So should be very interesting to see over time. If you've got any other questions, please drop them in the comments now. We've got about almost 600 folks in the live today. So I want to thank you all for being here. I want to ask you, if you're watching on X, please follow the channel on X. If you're watching on YouTube and you're new to the channel, hit subscribe. Really appreciate all you all do for here at On the Pen to allow us to bring patient-centric obesity medicine news to empower you to have more competent and confident conversations with your doctor. If you rewind through the video, we've been covering the Novo Nordisk earnings call, and there was a lot in there. So I hope that you'll go back and check that out. If you're just joining us, you can check out the earnings call from Eli Lilly from earlier this week. All that's available on our YouTube channel. But to the gateway to all things on the pen, starts with otplinks.com, which can take you to our website, our Substack, our Instagram, all the things. We're everywhere. Doesn't look like there's a lot of questions. So with that said, I want to thank you all for being here and thank you for being the best part of what we do at On the Pen. I appreciate you hanging out with me today on this recap of the Novo Nordisk earnings call. What a week. We'll have some more information from Obesity Week. And of course, we'll be back live tomorrow morning, probably late to mid-morning. So make sure you hit the bell for notifications if you're on YouTube to get notified when we go live. We will probably be going live tomorrow after the announcement from the Trump administration so we can dissect the devil in the details on this cheaper GLP-1, the coverage for obesity medicine under Medicare, all the things we'll be covering. So thank you for being here and thank you for being the best part of what we do. We'll catch you on the next one.